Hello, everyone. I am excited to be back with you again today. I'm Christine Newman. I lead customer advocacy at Blackbaud, and really excited to be with you to introduce today's keynote, Shelby Tallent, who will be talking about how leaders can foster a culture where AI empowers teams, drives ethical innovation, and unlocks new opportunities. Before I get to Shelby, I'm just going to cover a few housekeeping notes. The audio for this webinar being broadcast through your speaker. So if you have any issues, just kind of use the old browser refresh trick. The recording will be available afterwards. You'll receive an email with a link to that. The slides are available on the Docs tab on the right side of your screen, and you can use, we hope to have Q&A at the end. And so you can, if you have specific questions for Shelby, you can put them in the Q&A and we will get to those at the end. So on to Shelby. As the founder and chief ethical AI strategist, Shelby Tallent brings together a unique blend of technical expertise, strategic thinking, and a deep commitment to responsible AI practices. As a former AI product leader and US Navy veteran, Shelby has spearheaded cutting edge AI initiatives and led teams to create transformative solutions. Also, as we celebrate the start of Pride Month, I want to recognize Shelby's position as a board member for Start Out, where she drives programming and initiatives that support LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs in the Pacific Northwest. So with that, I am excited to welcome Shelby to the stage and to have her kick it off.
Well, thank you very much, Christine. I appreciate the intro. I'm very excited to have the opportunity today to discuss how to cultivate a culture of smart innovation and really foster a new beginning of AI empowerment. For the discussion today, I kind of want to start off with a quote that's really stuck with me over the past few years. I heard AI won't replace people, but people using AI will replace people. This was said by Richard Baldwin back in like 2023 at a conference for AI. And it made you really think. You're like, man, like, is my role going to be pushed out? Are my tasks going to be automated? Well, before any of that can happen, people have to learn how to use AI and implement those solutions. And I think the people who are taking those on as champions, they're going to have a unique perspective to shape what's going on in that culture. So today, I want to walk you through why AI empowerment matters, that shift we're living through right now and what the impact of that is, how you and your business or the vendors you work with can build a culture of smart innovation. What does it take from the ground up or top down? I'll walk through some real world examples of what I've experienced. I want to make sure that I'm helping you with your blind spots, so we'll discuss some common pitfalls to avoid. And then I have a call to action for you on what you can do to help cultivate that smart innovation. I do want to leave about 7 to 10 minutes at the end for questions. So feel free to put those in, and the team will help flag those down for me. So why does AI empowerment matter? We're at a point where you're either going to adapt or you fall behind. There's new emerging trends happening every single day. How many of you can actually think about something that you learned in, say, 15 years later? It wasn't relevant anymore. You didn't need to know that. There was a solution. I think for me, one of the things I think of is when I first got out of the Navy, I worked as a Geek Squad Auto Tech, and I learned how to replace speakers in car radios. And nowadays, everything is more advanced in technology in your cars. I don't really need to know how to just switch out a car radio anymore. With the AI revolution, it's the same thing. We have technology from 15 years ago that was talking about digital transformation, analytics, automating that. And now we're at the point where not only is it chatbots, we're getting into AI agents and agentic AI. These solutions are here to help innovate smarter, faster. And for me, I believe there is a way that you can do it more ethically. The way that you can do this is cultivating internal literacy around this and making sure that it leads to sustainable growth. Is the knowledge that you're sharing being received? Are people listening? Do they understand it? And are they in a culture where they feel comfortable asking questions before you move forward to that next step in your AI maturity? So the shift that we're living through right now is you don't have to be a data scientist or a data engineer or an AI engineer or an analytics specialist anymore. AI is for everyone. We're seeing a lot of no code and low code options. And I think you can even find some of those trainings on how to even do that here today at this conference. We're seeing the democratization of tools such as chatbots, those agents, auto ML pipelines to support machine learning models. And we're seeing organizations that empower that at all levels. I've seen it from the executive point where a CEO of mine was very passionate about AI and wanting to start an AI incubator. I had wanted us to get him a AI newsletter every 2 weeks with the latest news. I've seen it being built up from the ground up as someone who was just a software developer and said, hey, you know what? I'm passionate about this. I want to make a Gen AI Guild, and people who are interested in AI can come to this meeting and we can discuss the new things that are coming out, and we can talk to our leaders and see if they'd be willing to invest in this and let us automate some of these solutions. So again, it doesn't have to be from top down. It doesn't have to be from bottom up. Here, I want to talk through what it takes to have that smart innovation culture. So there's really 5 key areas. I've already spoke to the first one. That's going to be AI literacy. So the biggest thing is just making sure that everyone has a basic understanding of what AI is and the capabilities and its limitations. The other thing is also being in the development side and leading AI product development. Everyone sometimes has a different definition of done or a meaning of what a solution is. So I actually encourage and empower each of you to say, hey, what does that mean to you? So if someone says something, what does that look like? Or what are the requirements for that? I think that will help you with that understanding. I think also making sure that you pull people in who are not just a part of those technical teams. You want to make sure that people understand AI that are a part of marketing, HR, finance. You want to embrace people who are AI curious, where they're looking at programs or boot camps and coming to events like this to meet other people who are very interested in learning about what's in the space and how they can move forward and leverage that in their day to day. Second is trust and ethical grounding. I believe AI without governance is innovation without direction. The biggest thing is you can spin up all these proof of concepts, whether you're working at a large Fortune 500 company or you're working for a nonprofit. If you don't understand what problem you're solving and who you're solving it for, sometimes you'll just build something and it won't be adopted. And if a solution isn't adopted, you're never going to be able to actually productionize that. So I believe that you should have embedded responsible AI principles around transparency, fairness, privacy, and having an internal AI ethics committee. The way that I see myself when I do speak to businesses about ethical AI, responsible AI, or AI governance is making sure that people understand what the basic checklists are. So at each phase of this project lifecycle, what are the things that I should answer? Some of the things I think of is, do you have a documented business case? Do you understand who your customer is? Do you understand what your goals are and how that ties into your team or your org or your company goals? When you are developing, what are the model evaluation techniques you're using, or what Gen AI tools are you leveraging? Have you actually assessed, if you're utilizing a vendor, if they align with your privacy and your AI standards? When you are doing unit testing, how are you determining what accuracy looks like? So these are all things that are in a basic checklist, but sometimes when you move so quickly, you don't think about it. The thing that I can think of is, how many times are we so focused on something that you didn't realize you did 2 or 3 things? Example that I come up with is, sometimes I drive home and I don't know how many red lights I stopped at because I'm on autopilot. I'm thinking about my day. Maybe I'm listening along to a podcast. It's the same thing with people when they do the same thing with AI development or deployment. You can get used to the monotonous steps. So I think that having someone that comes in with a governance or an ethical or responsible background, just to make sure, hey, are we looking around all those corners? Because we're not perfect people. We're not going to know everything. And I think for this, it goes into our next topic of psychological safety to experiment. Do we feel okay to fail? Is it okay not to know all of those questions? And I think that is very important to know. And I think you should celebrate lessons learned. So if you don't know something, say, hey, I'm not really good with marketing materials. I'm really good from a technical perspective. Let me pull someone in who's got a really good UI, UX, or design perspective to help me with that gap before we push this solution out to a customer. Those are things that I want you to be encouraged to do. So again, experimentation is the engine of innovation, but I do want to caution that you can experiment all day, but make sure that you're setting yourself up for success and understand the goals that you're trying to achieve, and remember who your customer is, who your stakeholders are, and why you have the solution, and is it going to provide some type of benefit or convenience to them. Um, I already kind of talked about cross-functional collaboration, but again, it's very important to break those silos. So not only from a tech or business perspective, you may want to pull someone in from legal or operations, especially if it touches sensitive data like PII or PHI, if you're working in the healthcare space. Maybe you have questions that are ambiguous. You may have to have someone review a contract. Make sure that you have those cross-disciplinary brainstorming sessions, because the innovation happens when you pull all of those people with those different perspectives in one room together. The thing that I think about it at the end of the day is how many of us utilize Gen AI technology or have really good ideas, but we know what we want to achieve. We don't know how to do it. But if you pull the right people in the room, there's people who can help you not only make your idea better, they can make it come to life. So see those people who are in those non-technical roles as helping bring things to life as well. And then the last one is leadership sponsorship. I think leaders set the tone around the permission to innovate and question things. So it's very important that your leaders are also supporting that smart innovation culture. I think having visibility for AI champions across the org. So for me, if you are really interested in something and you're not sure if there's buy-in, sometimes just ask your leader for to go for lunch to discuss it, have a coffee and chat, and just say, hey, my intent is to come here because I'm very passionate about X, and I think it can provide this value to either our customers or the business. And I'd love to get your perspective on how to cultivate it and get it prioritized. And from there, if you listen to them and see kind of what the red tape is as well, you could probably find a common ground on how to achieve not only something you're passionate about, but making sure that you're getting things prioritized in the right manner without stepping on people's toes. I call AI success as a team sport, but leadership hands out those jerseys. They really see who's working on what, who has the skill sets. It's their responsibility to make sure that they're putting together with that group of people with a vast different expertise in that room to make these things come together. So I think for me, I have established AI governance councils at different companies, and this was always with the permission of either I reported to a CISO or chief product officer or chief innovation officer. And for me, I make sure that I have someone on that council from each member of the organization, whether you're talking about data governance, data privacy, compliance, legal, our engineering teams, marketing. And I think the reason for this council is not only to discuss what you're all working on, but to make sure that you have those people who can make those really tough questions pop up before you do take something to production and say, hey, is this actually the right solution? Have we protected the data? Are we making sure that we're only bringing the right sources in? And I have also led that these councils can help build those policies, those guidances, those AI governance frameworks as well, and publish those for the companies. And then those people on that council are your AI champions that can go and help make sure that every single member of the business understands what that building block is, that foundation in terms of AI, and how to take it all the way through the product lifecycle. So I want to talk through some real world examples. So I recently got to work for a credit market intelligence company, and they were really struggling with scaling their business. They had large amounts of financial data, both from public and private companies. And their CEO, this was the CEO I was mentioning, he was so passionate about AI. He wanted AI to be an ethos, was his quote. And he was just so passionate about making sure that not only the technical teams had this, but he was thinking about what about the people on the editorial teams that review this amount of financial data and write reports up, and we publish that? What about all the people on the data team that are spending 10, 20, 30 hours a week just on these 3 data sets? Is there a way we can implement AI to help do some of that work so that they can actually make sure that there's data quality? The product team, are they able to utilize AI to help with their designs or helping with user experience research, or even um, working with their development teams to figure out, is it actually feasible to complete this work in this amount of time? While I was there, I helped lead the implementation of Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, and GitHub Copilot, and custom models for all of the business. They wanted to make sure that the teams did feel empowered to utilize AI, and that they just weren't just like solving the problem, but they were transforming the way that they worked. Another really thing that I give this company for kudos for is they came up with an AI Innovation Leader Award, where every quarter they would take submissions on an Gen AI or AI idea, and they didn't want it to have anything to do with their day-to-day job. Just what's something that you're passionate about that you think you do utilize AI for, that would make the world better or this industry better or something. And it really encouraged everyone who was not even on the AI innovation team to come and say, hey, I am really passionate about mental health. And I think it'd be a really great solution to have something that could offer really easy support tools to people who don't have easy access to it. I'm thinking of maybe building a chatbot and then pulling in resources that are public, and then being able to share that even not only with our employees, but with people who work for people from different marginalized communities that may not have access to those tools. And I was a part of the committee that would review those and give that award out. And it was really fulfilling to see that not only were they implementing these tools internally for them to use, but it was encouraging people to think about AI in the world, not just what their day job was. I think for me, the biggest impact most recently has been kind of working with a Fortune 500 travel and leisure company. They were very large scale. And let me tell you, when you work in the travel and leisure industry, especially like people who were just used to like driving boats all day and flying planes or driving buses, they've been doing that for hundreds of years at this point. Technology didn't come along until much, much later. So AI development was across multiple teams, but they didn't really have best practices or standards in place. So I came in to help establish this AI governance program, and implemented an AI governance framework to, one, help encourage that literacy that I spoke about, first off in the building blocks, but also to make sure that people were encouraged to be curious and ask those questions. And if they didn't have answers or guardrails or things were ambiguous, they felt okay raising their hand and they felt safe to do that. And that's where that psychological safety comes in. The other thing is again, really fostering a cross collaborative environment. By launching an AI governance council, we help bring transparency to a lot of the projects that were being done in silos. Some teams were like, wow, I've been working on an agentic AI solution. I didn't know your team was also working on it. Are we building it on the same platform? Is it for similar use cases? Do you think we could aggregate our work and reduce those costs? And I think within the first 12 months, we were able to estimate a cost savings of $46 million across that business. But even though these are public and private companies here, I don't want to discount any nonprofits as well. I think you can take the same type of things where you can look at what Gen AI tools are available and see if you can empower your teams to utilize them. First, you have to assess those vendors and making sure that they follow your internal policies, but seeing what you can do to alleviate something that's manual for someone. Or if you're even thinking of a solution that's going to help people in your industry, especially the nonprofit that you're working for, can you think of all the team members you probably need to pull together to make that happen? So some common pitfalls. The biggest one is treating AI as an only IT initiative. I've seen this where IT will come in and build a chatbot, and they're like, hey, I'm going to build a customer-facing chatbot. I'm just going to take all these documents, I'm going to put it in a knowledge base, build a RAG process, have it have an output to a front-end chatbot interface, and people will be able to go ask questions to it and get what they need. You would think that would be easy. I actually had a scenario where I was like, hey, before this, you released this to beta to 10% of the customers, because 10% at that company was still a lot. Let's just test it. I'd like to run some questions against it, um, and making sure that it just responded correctly. I had gotten some reports of customer support teams testing it, and they're like, well, it's hallucinating. And I'm like, well, how do we know it's hallucinating? How are we measuring that? And I actually went and asked a question, and it was about data privacy, and it matched what was on the company website. But when I pulled in the data privacy to actually team to actually analyze that answer, they're like, that doesn't line up with our internal policies. And I'm like, okay, so the chatbot isn't hallucinating. The customer success team thought it was hallucinating. I tested it. I could assume it was hallucinating. You tested it. But really, what it was is the source documents weren't verified before ingesting into the knowledge base. So, really, they had all of this knowledge in these documents, and it was pulling verbatim. But the reality was is that the customer facing documentation and the internal documentation were not aligned. They didn't match up. So by making sure that you are testing this with people who are not only in tech, like customer service, you're pulling in your data privacy team, you're pulling in people from HR. If you're ingesting those type of documents, make sure you can trust people, but verify is the question. Another common pitfall is overselling AI as magic without showing its limits. You have these people that come in and say, oh, yeah, we can do X, Y, and Z. We'll be able to completely automate your solution from beginning to end. But what is the actual level of work needed to implement that and utilize that? Are we sure that it's going to make sure that it's meeting our goals? Does it still meet what our customers want? So for me, I think it's really important to set things in phases and set expectations clearly. Because again, if you oversell AI, you're going to end up with a lot of dissatisfaction. And again, that offering is not going to be adopted. And the last one, innovation theater, celebrating ideas without execution. Again, if someone has an idea and they want to test it out, making sure that you have that leadership sponsorship and you have that psychological safety to go and do that. And if something doesn't work, you can pull people in a room and say, hey, you know what? We learned XYZ didn't work. What can we do to mitigate this or make this better so that this isn't an issue? And you really take that as, you know what? We still accomplish building out pipelines. We still accomplish ingesting our data sources, but maybe our model that we utilize wasn't the right one. Maybe we just need to switch that out. So I think making sure that you're encouraging people to share what they've done. And if there is feedback, you're giving that feedback in a positive but constructive way. And if you do feel like you aren't being supported, I do always encourage people to go to their leaders or even talk to the person directly and say, hey, I'd just love to get a different understanding of what you meant by this. Or I felt this way when you said this. And it was something that I would like to figure out how we don't come across again. And sometimes those difficult conversations can help with changing that culture shift. So I have a call to action to each of you. I have a short, medium, and long-term action plan to help you guys with establishing a empowering AI culture. So within a 0 to 6 month timeframe, being able to launch AI literacy programs, making sure everyone has the same foundational knowledge. What does AI mean? Is agentic AI? AI is data science, machine learning AI. Everyone always has these different questions, but just make sure that everyone at your business or your organization is starting from that same point. And then also identify 2 to 3 use cases that you can do small pilots for. Maybe you want to increase internal developer productivity, so you want to implement GitHub Copilot. Or maybe you have a hard time having 24/7 support for your customer support team or your contact centers. So maybe let's create a customer chatbot, and then it can integrate into your ticketing system. And then you can maybe The third item, have an agentic AI that helps with your ticketing workflow to make sure that things aren't sitting there and people are reminded to complete those things. So that's what I would say for the short term. Medium term, building cross-functional AI task forces. So again, thinking about all the members in your business, you may work at a startup where you have 5 people, or you may work at a Fortune 100 company where you have 500,000 people. Think about who are the people that you need to involve to accomplish what you want to in terms of Gen AI or data science or machine learning. And then when you're doing this, think about what your ethical AI practices are. What's responsible AI to you? What's responsible AI to your peer? Bring different people to the table. I really encourage that you have people from different backgrounds, different ages, different cultures, to really question that and make sure that you're thinking about everyone in your business and even having a representation of potentially what your customers are as well. And then long term, scale successes. I think that's the thing is if you start to get momentum and you've been able to productionize something, make sure that one, you're not only celebrating that, but you're continuing to learn and build on that. And you're really starting to integrate more of these innovative ideas into your business processes. So no longer is it a POC and you're doing it with one group. Maybe you built an internal chatbot to help you write user stories and do unit testing for one part of your development and product teams. But there's 20 other teams in the business. So maybe you can share that tool and help it outside of just your org. So all things to ask questions about and think about. But again, this is high level, what an easy action plan could be. I think that there's more things you could add to each of these, but it's just dependent on your industry and your business. So that's what I have for the building blocks to starting a AI empowerment culture. So I'd love to open up and see what type of questions do you guys have? What brought you to this talk today? What's something I maybe didn't answer that I could help with or give guidance on or point you in the right direction? Christine, I think you're mute.
These days, I will learn to unmute myself, right? But I'm just saying, if you have a specific question, please, now is the time to put it in the Q&A chat so that we can more easily keep track of it.
Yeah.
The chat,
I
so
see
engaged
someone.
and fast moving.
Yeah, someone said
But
it'd be really good to have a sample AI governance policy. I think there's a
yeah,
couple places. So IAPP.org, International Privacy Organization, they have a lot of great foundational policies on AI governance frameworks that you can look at. NIST also has an AI risk management framework to follow. So I would look at what's published there. And there's also the Cloud Security Alliance. The Cloud Security Alliance is going to be one of the best resources for you because not only do they have documentation around AI roles and responsibilities, they have documentation that's coming out on how to even red team AI agents. What does AI controls look like and how would you implement those? They have all of these different working groups. So I would definitely reach out and read those solutions. But I would say my favorite thus far has been IAPP.org or Cloud Security Alliance for the things that I utilize in my back pocket to help businesses with.
great. I know Eric is busy putting those in the chat. Great question here from James. His biggest question is what can he do as part of a larger organization? This isn't in their specific purview, but would definitely benefit from an AI strategy. So how can he convince? I'm sure many have this question as well. How can someone that is not in charge of quote unquote in charge of AI? How can they convince their organization to look at this or get involved in the conversations that may be happening elsewhere in the organization?
I think the biggest thing is knowing what your team's goals are and what you're working towards and seeing if you can identify a solution that will help achieve that goal. So then you could go to your leader and say, hey, I know that we're trying to work on produce quality, and I would love to implement a e-learning training that if we start to get surveys from the people who go to the grocery store and pick groceries and then deliver them to people. If there's a specific individuals where you're starting to see the quality and the surveys go down, maybe we can encourage them and push e-learnings to them. I think we can utilize AI to do that, or have some type of model that's a good example of something that may spear them on and say, yeah, I think maybe that might be a good idea. But I think the biggest thing is people are afraid to be told no. And sometimes you're going to be told no a lot, especially in this economy. I know that a lot of people are fearful of reduction in forces. You're having budgets be cut in half. But sometimes if you can say, hey, even though we're going to be spending a little bit more to utilize the solution, I think it will not only help us meet our goal, but potentially succeed it. It's understanding who are the decision makers, having those conversations, and then also building a rapport with your peers to see if they have a buy-in to what you'd like to get accomplished. Well, there's not one easy answer to it, but the best thing is always work backwards from your customer and figure out how to tie it into those goals that your team specifically has.
Great. And there was a question that we saw in the chat before that we thought you might have a great answer to. Someone said that they'd love to see a specific example of a process that switched to AI and how the staff benefited. So I'm curious if, kind of thinking back in your career, if something comes to mind.
Yeah. So when I worked for that credit market intelligence company, they were a competitor to Bloomberg. So their editorial team was huge and it was global. You had people in Asia, America, South America, North America, Europe. And their goal was to be the first one to drop a news story. So, you look at your phone and you get those news alerts like breaking news, a ship ran off the coast of Florida or something. You're like, oh man, that's pretty crazy. It's these people who would write that stuff in real time, and they needed to have data on these companies. We actually we built a pipeline on the back end that would ingest all details from our relationships with our vendors. But also, if someone needed to write something, we built in a auto generation of editorial documents. So they didn't have to write everything from scratch. We would say like there would be a disclaimer on all those articles that this article did utilize Gen AI for this technology, which some of the customers did not like. But if you're trying to have breaking news and you're trying to write something, like imagine Tom Brady wins his 10th Super Bowl or something, who's going to be the first one to break that story? So we were able to empower our editorial teams by giving them this tool, and they were able to push out like 60% more articles in a week time frame than what they were able to do manually.
Wow.
And when you work in the business of trying to break news first, it becomes a priority of being quicker, but also making sure that the information's right. And we even built in automatic machine learning models that would check the validity of these articles before they were published to make sure we weren't just like writing things and there potentially being inaccuracies or hallucinations.
Great. That's a great example. Someone else had a question about, if obviously I think most of the attendees here are, kind of tech adapters and, kind of trying to stay ahead of the curve. But there might be, people in their organizations that are, maybe even a little like tech advancement averse. So how do you, kind of think about implementing, AI in that, and bringing people along with you?
Yeah, one thing that I have seen a lot of companies do is start to hire prompt engineers, where their job is just to come in and teach people how to utilize internal chatbots or Gen AI tools. I think if your business can invest in someone like that, it's been beneficial with helping people from all different maturity ages around AI on getting what that foundation is. But also, I think it's up to each one of us as people who are AI champions and care about the space. If you know someone is technology adverse and they're struggling with something, sometimes it's like, hey, John, I noticed that you worked really hard on this PowerPoint presentation. You spent 10 hours on it. I was able to actually auto-generate my images from my PowerPoint using this solution. And it's being thoughtful and sharing that knowledge. You're really cultivating that culture of AI empowerment. Because I know some of us are like, well, I just worry about me at the end of the day and getting my work done. But it's also encouraging other people to utilize those tools to help you as well. On the vice versa of that, if someone is technology advanced, if you notice someone is very tech savvy, just go up to them and say, hey, like, I would love to get time with you to learn how you did that, and be curious about it. I've had coworkers come up to me and say, hey, like, I really like that policy you wrote. Can you help me come up with the structure for mine? And I was like, yeah, I actually use Microsoft Copilot. I put in the key things I wanted to speak about and I asked it for a format, and I use that as a baseline. Let's set up 30 minutes and I'll walk you through how I wrote that, and the kind of things I went back and forth in the chatbot and what I decided to use and not use from the output of that AI. So again, it's one, being curious, but two, also offering to help others get up to speed as well, if you feel like you could help them,
Yeah,
especially with a manual process.
for sure. And once you bring those people along, they can be, I think, become some of your biggest champions too.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Sky Developer community, I'll put a plug in for that. I know many attendees are in that, and there's so much great information sharing that goes on in there, and sharing code and sharing processes. So if you have not checked out the Sky Developer community, go to community.blackbaud.com, and you'll find a great resources there. I love this question. Can you speak to the importance of diversity in developing data councils to empower good outputs of using AI, and developing a corporate practice to using AI?
Yeah, I think diversity in terms of data, as well as diversity in the people who utilize the data. So I'll talk to the diversity in data first. So the diversity in data is, you want to make sure that you have understanding of your metadata and your data lineage. And the people who work on those, I've found it very successful that businesses that identify a data owner and a business owner for each of those data sets helps bring a different perspective to it. So if you're a data scientist and you're like, hey, I want you to build a model to help understand why our customers are churning, they can go out there and grab data, but they may not understand the data. Whereas you have someone who owns that data set, or someone from the business perspective who utilizes that data every day, can give them a different vantage point to help them build that model to come with that. In terms of diversity, like with having a data council, I think it's important that you bring in people who come from different viewpoints culturally, their backgrounds, and even their different age groups, because everyone has a different level of comfort when you speak about data, especially when you're in healthcare. If you start talking about like patient health data, people are going to be like, well, how do I make sure that this isn't leaked and someone can get my social security number, or they know what my diagnoses are? And it's important to make sure that there's also people in that council that can talk through the technical things and say, well, we can anonymize or synonymize the data on the back end, or we'll make sure that this only stays in this ecosystem. We don't use any of that information to retrain any models. It's only pulled in on an ad hoc basis. Being able to articulate is very, very important. I thought this is a real story from last week. I was talking about dogs with a coworker of mine, and she was like, "Well, I did an Embark profile for my dog, and I it links back and tells me potentially what their health markers are, but also it can link and tell me what their potential family members are." She's like, "It's funny that we'll just give out like our pets information in this portal and stuff, but when it comes to us, we're a little bit more hesitant to do that." And we thought about it, and we had a full conversation that, well, most pets don't usually have to pay bills, and they don't have credit scores and things like that. So we're probably a little bit more comfortable with their private health information versus ours. But it was a really unique perspective.
Yeah, that is funny to think about. Not one that I not one that I've thought of before. Um, Austin has asked, and I think this is a great question, given how far AI has come in the past 5 years, which really is just amazing to think about, where we were 5 years ago to where we are now. What are your thoughts on how AI will advance in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I think you're going to start to see a lot of manual processes be automated. So I spoke to 10, 15 years ago, it was all about digital transformation and people wanting to get analytics into like what wasn't working in their business. So we've had that for the last 10 years of like what's not working, and then how we can then deep dive into those and resolve them. Now with these agents, we can say not only do we know what's not working, we can put an agent in that can go and do that work. The challenge with that is you are going to see a lot of companies that are reducing the amount of headcount that they're hiring, because a lot of those manual workflows are now being done by these agentic solutions or chatbots. But I encourage people to be curious about AI, because as an example, like an AI governance manager or a prompt engineer was not a job
Mhm.
even 2 years ago. So there's opportunities that if you're passionate about this space, like you're either passionate about building it or buying it or governing it, there can be a role that you can go into if you really feel like you're potentially your solution or what you do in your day to day is going to go away. So I encourage people to think about that, and really question things. Again, be curious about the space and be an AI champion. Because again, that quote at the beginning of my presentation is, AI isn't going to replace you, but people who utilize AI will. And if you can utilize those tools and show, like, I was able to automate these workflows, so now I'm able to spend now 30 hours a week on customer calls, whereas before I could only spend 10 hours a week on customer calls. Your business may see more value in that like white glove approach, especially as we come to this new agentic age.
Yeah, I was as you were talking, I was thinking back exactly to your first quote, and how that really layers into this. And you're right, there were job titles we have now that we didn't have 5 years ago, and in 5 years, there's going to be job titles that we can't even think about right now, but will exist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we have maybe time for one or two more questions. I've seen some in the chat and in the Q&A as well. We've talked a lot about the ethics of, AI ethics and privacy and all of that. But, there's a lot of curiosity around kind of how, the industry, I guess, general AI is also thinking about environmental ethics as well with AI.
Yeah, the biggest one is around like the power that we need to support all these data centers, and also how we cool those data centers and the impact of water. Um, Someone actually brought up a good point the other day. They're like, well, I try to just use standard Google to search for things now, but I've noticed that if you go and Google something, it'll give me an AI overview. It links back to Google Gemini. So even doing a standard search like you before is still utilizing AI. So what's the difference between utilizing like ChatGPT or Google Gemini versus a standard search engine now when everything's tying together? I think the biggest thing is just be mindful of your use of AI. If you're using it to ask every question, like how do I tie my shoe? How do I get from point A to point B? Can you give me a recipe for this? Maybe that might be a good opportunity for you to ask a person instead, or maybe call your parent or your grandparent, and say, hey, do you remember Nona's recipe from 1930 on how to make her gravy? I did just watch that Nona's movie on Netflix. That's fresh in my head. But take that moment to have a human connection, and really utilize it for things that like you truly need insight from and you don't know. I think it's good in the work setting, but you still have to be cautious and mindful of your usage. It's just like using our mobile phones. How many of
Right.
us are spending hours on social media and just scrolling, and we're not picking up a book or going outside and sitting in the sun? You have to be mindful of your consumption about almost everything nowadays. And I encourage people to do that with AI as well. Take a moment to be screen off. Take a moment to go and have a conversation with someone you may have not talked to before. Maybe catch up with an old friend, or talk to your grandma or grandpa you haven't called in 3 weeks, and they'd probably love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think that's a great reminder, that, even though this is a group of techies, to not forget the human element as well. Well, we are coming up on the final seconds. Thank you so much, Shelby. This was an amazing talk. Really appreciate, everything and answering all the questions. And to everyone, enjoy the rest of today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
All right. All right, you can leave.